Welcome back to MedTech's Empire State Biomed Focus 22, as we're spending some time with really some of the most cutting edge innovators in the life sciences in the capital region. I am pleased to welcome aboard Dwight Cheu, CEO of ZEPHYRx, currently located in Troy, formerly attendant at the back at Albany Medical Center. Dwight, it's terrific to have you with us. Thanks so much for being here.
Thanks for inviting me. Nice to see you.
So Dwight, I'm wondering for our audience, help us understand a little bit about ZEPHYRx. Let's kind of walk backwards for a minute. What is the problem that you guys set out to solve?
Sure, yeah. So we help those with serious respiratory conditions monitor their health while at home or wherever they are. And what that allows them to do is work with their physician to better understand their condition, understand what their care plan should be, and potentially detect flare-ups earlier than they otherwise would have. So basically, almost monitoring whenever you need it of your serious lung condition, whether it be COPD or asthma or bronchiectasis or cystic fibrosis.
And tell us a little bit, if you can, about your solution. How do you help people get to that space?
Sure. I should maybe take you back and tell you a little bit about our beginnings. So we actually started making a musical instrument for the disabled. It's called the Jambox, and it's a digital harmonica, and you can play it hands-free. One of our founders is a quadriplegic, and he wanted to play music besides just a harmonica. And because this is connected to a computer, you can play it as a guitar or a saxophone or a piano or a drum set. So it's very expressive and way more fun than just a harmonica. And as it turns out, because it has X, Y, and Z control, you can use it to make play video games. And actually, Dave, our co-founder, actually paints with this using hands-free, X, Y, and Z controls. So that was our first product. And what we realized was that when Dave played this instrument, he was getting fantastic respiratory exercises, because as a quadriplegic, he has very low control over his chest muscles, and he speaks very softly. Doesn't move a lot of air through his lungs. And he was getting great respiratory therapy by playing our instrument. That spawned a grant application to the NIH, where we were funded for almost $2 million to do video games for breathing exercises. And that grant was submitted in concert with Albany Medical College and one of their physicians there, Dr. Smith. And that in turn led to a clinical trial at Albany Medical Center with a variation of this to do breathing exercises with video games. And that was our first product. And we launched that product at the end of 2019. And of course, March of 2020, 3-4 months later, COVID hit. And the pulmonologists we were working with at Albany Medical Center and other places were saying that all their patients were canceling their appointments, but these same critically ill respiratory patients needed to receive care even though they were staying home. And we realized that we could make a modification to our device and our mobile application to actually add a diagnostic capability on top of the therapy that we were already providing. So we, in turn, made an addition. We have our device, which allows you to do breathing exercises and now diagnostic functions for respiratory conditions. And of course, we have a mobile application. And with these two things, you can basically, we have transformed what is oftentimes a $10,000 device in the clinic to a just over $100 device that you can use at home and get the same results and the same level of care you might have gotten by going directly into a physician's office. So it was obviously transformative, and on top of that, in the time of COVID, being able to deliver respiratory care remotely was huge, and it really sparked tremendous growth for our company. We've deployed our solution to almost 35,000 patients in the last 2 years across hospitals throughout the United States.
And Dwight, tell me a bit about Dwight Cheu. Give me your journey. What brought you to this space? What's your background? Where do you find yourself here?
Sure. Yeah. I got my start in Silicon Valley, and this is actually my 8th startup. My first 2 startups were in Silicon Valley, and all 7 prior startups have had positive exits. So I've been on a lucky string of really good results from companies that went from 100 million to a billion. From another company went from 60 to 400 million. Another company went from 15 to 150 million. I've had all the gamut of large and small companies across multiple industries. I've had a company, worked for a company that, local company, Vicarious Visions, got bought out by Activision. Another local company here, MapInfo, was ultimately purchased by Pitney Bowes. Before we went public, I worked for a company that was a legal discovery company that was purchased by Xerox, and a music company that was purchased by Getty Images. So I've had quite a varied background. This is my first healthcare company, but all my experiences in both video games and music made me a perfect fit for the Jambox, and that's how we transitioned to healthcare.
And where did you come into this process? I mean, were the inventors, did they seek you out? How did you make those connections?
Sure, yeah. They sought me out, and I've been with the company over 5 years, and they were in the midst of developing their next version of the Jambox, and I stepped in to actually complete that project and bring it to market.
So in some earlier conversations, we've been, chatting with folks about what I like to think of as kind of collisions of value, kind of serendipitous meetings that bring people together. Does the creation of ZEPHYRx kind of fall into that category, or was there an intentional route that brought you all together?
I would say serendipity and luck had a lot to do with it. So that when Mike and Dave were first building the Jambox, they had no intentions of bringing it out as a healthcare device. They wanted to play music, but they recognized the value of it in a healthcare setting, and so that spawned that NIH grant, and then of course the as bad as the COVID pandemic has been, it really drove the adoption of our product.
And I'm wondering, kind of apropos of that, certainly we have seen generally an acceleration of the adoption of whether it's telemedicine, remote monitoring, other forms of healthcare and health modalities that physically separate perhaps the patient from the caregiver. And it sounds to me like you guys similarly have fallen into that category of
very much so
adoption. Yeah.
We're definitely at that intersection of telehealth and remote monitoring. And, our specialty is doing just the respiratory component of that. And so we're a fantastic focused solution and a great add-on to some of these other remote patient monitoring solutions out there.
So tell me, Dwight, without, at the risk of having you reveal all of your state secrets, I'll only ask for some of your state secrets. What's your vision for ZEPHYRx? Here we are, early summer of 2022. You certainly have had some significant success. Your product is already out in the market and widely adopted. Where do you go from here with ZEPHYRx?
Sure. So as good as the COVID pandemic has been for us, and as much as we deployed our solution to tens of thousands of patients out there, there are literally millions and millions of patients that we have not yet even touched, and thousands of pulmonologists for which we have not touched yet. So our vision is to make our form of remote respiratory monitoring become the standard of care for many of these major respiratory conditions. So we've just barely started to scratch the surface. We have so much growth potential in terms of bringing our solution to a much broader market.
And in terms of your physical presence, you're located, if I understand correctly, right now in Troy, having
Yeah.
having outgrown your space at the back at Albany Medical Center. With all due respect to the wonderful assets of the capital region, Troy and Albany aren't probably at the top of most people's lists of hotspots in life sciences innovation. I'm wondering if you can talk about what it means to be in the capital region. Are there particular assets that you've taken advantage of that have made a difference to you?
Very much so. I would say that as we've been designing our product and bringing it to market, we actually have tapped into many resources locally here. For example, RPI and its CATS manufacturing group has been fantastic in terms of design and manufacturing expertise. We also, when we produced the Jambox, we partnered with SUNY Polytech to develop special silicon chips to make sure that we were accurately tracking the movement and playing the correct notes for our Jambox instrument. And then, Albany Medical Center is where we did our first clinical trial. We had over 300 subjects in that trial. So the medical resources here, and of course the back, were phenomenal. And then we reached out beyond the Capital District. We actually were a member of the Johnson & Johnson J-Labs accelerator down in New York City, as well as the Central New York Bioaccelerator based out of Syracuse. So we've tapped into resources not only locally within New York, but throughout the region.
Your story, frankly, is a story that we're hearing from other people in your situation, being able to take advantage of various resources and assets located at different places. So you've just talked about using the facilities of J-Labs in New York City, the back in Albany, the CNY BAC in Syracuse. I can't help but imagine that perhaps there may be someone in our audience who's wondering, I don't even know where to begin the process of figuring that out. I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about your experience in incubators and accelerators and the value that you found there.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think there is some serendipity there, as well as I would say that just taking advantage of your network, trying to be deliberate about how you expand and take advantage of all the people you interact with. I would have to say that perhaps the biggest thing that got our head start was that as part of the NIH grant that we received, it was an SBIR, STTR, fast track grant. The NIH has a concept commercialization program where they put startups through the process of educating them how to bring a medical product to market. And that probably helped us the most in terms of understanding all the steps. And we made so many mistakes, but we learned from that. And as part of those mistakes, we got to meet more and more people that will be able to help us with our journey.
So before we wrap up, let me turn the tables on you and ask you, what is it that ZEPHYRx is looking for? Is there how can New York's innovation community help ZEPHYRx?
And I'm sure that it's been said before. I would say that the upstate community offers a tremendous amount. One thing that we should definitely expand is access to capital. We are in the process of doing our first outside raise for a Series A investment, and we invariably will be looking outside the capital region. Those lead investors. There probably will be maybe some co-investors local, but the lead investor will come from outside the capital region, and that's, I think, one thing that would help us the most.
Well, I'm afraid we're going to have to end the discussion on that money note, but certainly a note that we hear from many folks in your position. Dwight Cheu, CEO of ZEPHYRx, thank you so much for spending some time with us. For folks who would like to learn more about ZEPHYRx and its solutions, you can find it at ZEPHYRx.com. That's ZEPHYRX.com. Again, Dwight, thank you for spending the time with us, and we hope to connect with you soon. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.